Today we are going to discuss the news and notes from the weekend. The Tigers played 3 spring training games, also some news and notes. Tarek Skubal named the opening day starter. We'll discuss all of that, any standouts as well, and then we will player preview Kerry Carpenter. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, March 4th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can join today and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Alrighty, welcome back. Hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. Happy Monday to all. So today we are going to discuss a lot of the news and notes to come out of the weekend. The Tigers played 3 spring training games, beat the Yankees, which was actually on TV. Nice change of pace, only the second televised game for the Tigers this spring. So a lot of our observations will come out of that game naturally, but also beat the Phillies on Friday and the Pirates lost to the Pirates rather on Saturday. So went 2-1 over the weekend. Again, I can't reiterate enough. It is spring training. All of this is with a grain of salt. This early in spring as well. We're not even, really close to being halfway through spring training. So there is a lot of time still, and we'll kind of talk about that with Manning and Maeda specifically, I guess, kind of reiterate the spring trainingness of everything. But especially when it comes to win-loss record, you will not find me being too, happy or sad or whatever about team results. But some individual performances to go over for sure. So we'll talk all about that in the first half of the show, and then we will spend the rest player previewing Kerry Carpenter. I think one of the more fascinating conversations on the team, just because if this offense expects to take a step forward and be closer to a middle of the pack, or even if they have plans to be an above middle of the pack caliber of offense this year, I think Kerry Carpenter turning into a legitimate middle of the lineup bat is going to, dare I say, have to be a big reason for that. So a really fascinating player. We'll talk about him. Let's start off by talking about the, biggest news, certainly the biggest news off the field to come out of the weekend, and that is that Tarek Skubal has been named the opening day starter. Yeah, I don't even really have too much to say here. This is just business as usual. This is just, today's Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday. Like I think we all expected that. I think that was pretty self-explanatory. It's nice to hear it. I think the only other thing I really take out of it is just how early into spring that was kind of announced and decided upon. It wasn't something that Hinch, waited for. I feel like there was one year, maybe both years of the Hinch era where it really came down to the, 1 year Matt Boyd, that might have been a Gardy team. I don't remember. 2020, 2019, 2021 are all kind of a blur because of COVID, but 2019, obviously not COVID, but you get my point. Just far enough removed now. Matt Boyd wasn't announced until like right before the season started. One of his last years, he was the opening day starter. And then, Erod, I feel like, I don't remember, but the point is, this early on, we'll take it, right? We'll that's fine. This is not a surprise. This isn't even really a big news story to me. I'm just glad that it is what we all expected it to be, and that is that Tarek Skubal is going to be the opening day starter. Again, when we player preview him, we will talk about the ceiling that he has and that I believe he has, which I think most people are kind of on board with. This dude at his best can be one of the best pitchers in the American League. So, yeah, no surprise, but cool to see the announcement. Like I said, more than anything, just the early in spring training. Let's talk about some of the notable performances on the field from the weekend. Let's start off with Sunday's game, again, because it was televised. Matt Manning and Casey Mize both pitch in this ball game. Final line for Matt Manning, I guess, who we'll start with because he was the starter. 3 innings, 1 hit, 1 earned run, no walks, 4 strikeouts. The 1 hit being a Juan Soto home run. He's batting like 700 in spring training, like literally 700 in spring training. It's remarkable. But Manning, this is now 2 starts under his belt, and I think that he's looked really solid. This one, the first time we've actually been able to like see him. And really all of the velocity is way up. I think that was probably the biggest thing on everybody's radar, was that all across the board, all of his pitches, the velo was up, the ride was up, the spin on his fastball was up as well. I mean, he was pumping 96, 97 at one point, throwing a lot of 95 in there as well. So that's a great sign. I think he threw one of the best changeups I've ever seen him throw in this outing as well, for whatever that's worth to you. It went about 90, 91, maybe even miles an hour. Very hard changeup, and it just fell off the table and was a full count, I want to say, 2-2 or full count changeup that led to a strikeout, even though it was well below the zone because of how effective of a pitch it was. Big swing and a miss there. So, yeah, man, I mean, 4 Ks in 3 innings and only 1 mistake. The only thing he was semi-consistently doing was a lot of his sliders that he was trying to throw caught a little bit too much of the plate, but the ones that didn't also looked really good. So, really kind of an interesting dynamic. When I said at the beginning of the show, it's still spring. I want to keep throwing that out there. It is still spring. So he looked great. I'm really excited about him going forward. If he looks like he did today in the regular season, we're on the pitch, baby. We're absolutely partying down Woodward if he can throw like that in the regular season. But we'll see. Long ways to go still until the regular season, and we've been fooled before. So good signs, though. Good signs. Not trying to take anything away from them. Just want to keep everything in perspective about where we're at in the season. That's all. Casey Mize then piggybacked Matt Manning. 2 innings, 1 hit, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. Command still kind of all over the place. And when he first entered the game, the fastball was only about 93 miles an hour. And I was like, okay, this is, that was quick to kind of snap back from the high velo that he had in his first outing. But no, then at one point he was pumping 97, just a few pitches later. So I think it's really the biggest thing for him is this is when people argue about, is spring training too long or whatnot, Casey Mize is a guy who's like, no, let's slow it down. Let's take all the time we need because he is a guy who you want to see the command improve throughout spring training consistently. You want to see it get slightly better and slightly better. Obviously 2 strikeouts in this one. The splitter was kind of all over the place as far as command goes. It was leaving it way too much in the zone at points, was bouncing it in the dirt, but also threw a couple of really good ones that I think got weak contact. So, I mean, again, just kind of inconsistent, but it is his second outing back in 2 years, and the velocity looked good, and the health seems to be good. So we're going to keep an eye on him and see where that goes. I mean, Alex Lang had a very Alex Lang outing in this one. 2 hits, 1 earned run, but also 3 strikeouts in all in 1 inning. So high event baseball, Alex Lang does. We talk over at Locked On Wings about low event hockey. Alex Lang is high event baseball. There's something's going to happen every single time he's out on the mound. As far as other people in this ball game, Vierling pulled a ball. That was cool. Andy Ibanez continues to rake. Obviously has a spot on this roster. I don't think a surprise to anybody. Mark Hanna with his first hit of the spring. Javi continues to look like Javi. Doesn't really look too much different, but on the same, breath as everything else, still early in the spring. Ryan Kreidler, solid. Jace Young hit a couple of balls really hard over the weekend. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and then Dylan Dingler caught. So injury, I know that's kind of been a shaky subject. We haven't really known what he's going to look like behind the dish there, but just good to see him back out there just in full health. And then the last thing was Akil Baddoo getting a start, didn't lead off or anything, but getting a start and staying in the game against 2 different lefties. Started against the lefty and then Nestor Cortez, and then did not get pulled when they brought in another lefty later in the game. I thought that was pretty fascinating as well. So I think that he's going to get a lot of playing time just because they really want to see what they have in him before they make that decision on who gets the last bench spot. And Badu obviously in that conversation. So I think that was kind of telling. Did not do too much. I think he went 0 for 2 with 2 Ks actually. So did not do too much with those situations, but we've known that he's kind of not awesome against lefties and hits much better against righties. And to see him in spring get opportunities against lefties already, I think is somewhat meaningful just in terms of decision making. So, okay, let's keep the ball rolling. Want to talk about Kenta Maeda and Jack Flaherty, who also pitched over the weekend. Any other standouts? Then we'll get into Kerry Carpenter. We will do all of that right after this. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll be back tomorrow, recapping, obviously, more spring training baseball. We finally will have, like I said, the Bally Sports Detroit broadcast, which will be cool. And then we'll player preview another player as we get closer and closer to opening day, hoping to get through everybody on the 40-man as best we can. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now also available on Amazon Fire TV for free in the free Fire TV channels app. Okay, so talked about Sunday's game. Really, the only notables I want to talk about for Friday and Saturday were mostly on the pitching side of things. Jack Flaherty threw again, and then Kenta Maeda as well. Actually, Parker Meadows homered this weekend as well. I guess that's something I should probably bring up on the offensive side of the ball. And then Andy Ibanez is homering pretty much every game he plays. Jack Flaherty goes 2 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. That 1 hit, obviously, being a solo homer to Henry Davis, one of my personal favorites. If you're a longtime follower of mine, you'll remember in the Henry Davis draft year, he was my favorite prospect. Very, very big fan of him. The Tigers obviously took Jackson Jobe in that draft, rather controversially at the time. But Jobe looking pretty darn good these days. So Flaherty velo is up. And that's the biggest thing. We've talked about this a lot. We talked about this in his first outing when the velo was up, and we'll talk about it again now. That's 2 outings for Flaherty in the spring, and the velocity's way up in both. And that's a great sign. And, same conversation with Manning, same with Mize. I'm going to keep reiterating. It's early in spring. Let's see how it goes when these guys are stretched out to, 5-6 innings. That's a completely different ball game than throwing 1 to 2 innings of spring training baseball against a lot of minor leaguers. So we will see how that progresses, but great signs early. And the biggest thing why it holds so much weight, I guess I should say, with Flaherty is just because one of the biggest things we point to, and we talked about this and broke it down on the episode when we signed him back over the winter, is that one of the bigger reasons why he has taken a step back and struggled, aside from just staying on the field and staying healthy, is because of fastball effectiveness. So seeing the velocity go up with that pitch specifically, I think gives people a lot of optimism about what he could do. And then Kenta Maeda on the flip side. Kenta Maeda was low. His velocity was only mid-80s, but very quickly, him and his trainer and kind of everybody in the Tigers organization, beat writers, I know Evan Petzold wrote a whole story about it. Everybody was very quickly to come out and be like, everybody stop freaking out. It's okay. He doesn't throw too terribly much over the winter. That's just a part of his yearly program and whatnot, is he doesn't pitch too much over the winter. So the long spring training is something he always, every year, has taken advantage of and will be ramped back up to, that low 90s fastball that we're used to from him. So something that everybody has said, do not freak out about. Until proven otherwise, I'm not going to freak out about it. Again, spring training, okay? But something that was certainly notable. What else? I think that's pretty much it for the weekend. Torkelson, I think, is put together in the few swings we have seen. He hasn't played in a televised game yet, but in the swings that we have seen, I guess looks solid, but that doesn't really mean anything, until we're seeing it, in game action and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you. Let's talk about Kerry Carpenter. Kerry Carpenter last season for the Detroit Tigers, obviously one of the bigger, I guess we'll say, coming out stories of, I was going to say of the Tigers, which is obviously true, but I think you can kind of even broaden that landscape to the AL Central or the American League or even baseball. This was a guy whose career arc has been really fascinating. Was not a very highly regarded prospect whatsoever, and then did nothing but rake in 2022. And to really turned a lot of heads, instantly went on everybody's radar. And again, going into the season in 2022 was on nobody's radar. So seeing him just work his way and just basically hit his way into being not only just a Major League Baseball player, but a prominent fixture in the middle of the lineup of a Major League Baseball team is really, really impressive and fascinating. Last season had 118 games played and ended with a 278 average, a 340 OBP, a 471 slug. That was good enough for 2.2 Fangraphs WAR, which I believe was 1/10 of a win less than leading the team, despite only playing in 118 games. I guess that's not super fair because Riley Green only played 99 games and I think was tied with him or maybe even led the team. But regardless, had a really good season had the injury, obviously, in the middle of the year there. What was that, June? But in the games he did play was really, really effective, obviously. 7% walk rate, 25.1% K rate. What other stats can I throw at you? That was good enough for a 811 OPS, one of the only hitters in recent Tigers memory, going back years and years, to end the season with an OPS in the 800s. That alone was something to kind of take a victory lap about. Early on in his career. He was, it's still pretty early in his career, but immediately after being called up, and even in the beginning part of 2023, there was a big question mark about his role, I guess we'll say, on the team, just because there were so many question marks surrounding his defense. And if you remember back to one of the things I was, very infamously very wrong about was the roster battle last spring between Kerry Carpenter and Akil Baddoo. And it was like, both of these guys can't make it. It's going to be one or the other. And Kerry Carpenter, and I thought that they were just going to choose Akil Baddoo. Obviously, Carpenter makes the team and does nothing but rake and continues, right, throughout the whole season, continues to hit. And that didn't stop until September. In the month of September, which is just unfortunate for recency bias, because that's, he ended the season with a 621 OPS. He also, if you just look at his last 24 games played, ended with an OPS just over 600, actually exactly 600. And the reason for that was the power just completely evaporated. He only had one extra base hit in the last 28 days of the season. And he had 0 home runs in the month of September. A guy that was a 20 home run hitter for this team, 20 homers, 64 RBIs, did not record a single home run in the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season, which was really remarkable because remarkable and probably not a positive connotation, really wild because he had 9 home runs in the month of August, right? He almost had double-digit homers in August and was completely raking. Him and Torkelson at one point there in the middle of August were just going back and forth, homering like what seemed like every single game. And then he gets to the very end, that last week of that month, and did not have a home run the rest of it. And just in general, the slugging percentage in September was .314. And for a guy that hit for a solid average, is a fine OBP guy, right? Not going to walk a boatload, but has the ability to draw walks, which is very important. But for a guy who a lot of his value comes from the long ball threat, not entirely. And I don't want to make him sound like Adam Dunn. Again, he hit almost 280 last year. Phenomenal just by putting the ball in play. But you're not going to find too much value in a hitter who has a slugging percentage that low. 314 in the month of September is alarmingly low. So let's talk about kind of why that happened. We'll talk a little bit more about the profile as well, what we can expect out of him in 2024. We will do all of that right after this. Game time is the definition of clutch. We talk about it all the time. You can get tickets right up to the start of an event, even an hour after the event starts. That's why it's my favorite ticketing app to use. It fits my spontaneous lifestyle when it comes to attending sporting events at the last minute and then just making last minute plans to go see the Tigers or the Wings, or, if you want to see the Pistons this year. You can also see the view of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. They have all-in prices that show your total up front as well, so you're getting a great deal before you even check out. You can buy tickets in 2 seconds, and it's literally just 2 taps, and boom, the tickets are sent straight to your phone. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets and download Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWN, all one word, for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, capital L, capital O, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in as always. So we are talking about Kerry Carpenter. Like I said, I mean, fantastic year, especially for the first, 80% of the season. Was above league average in pretty much every single offensive metric you can find. Sweet spot percentage, top 19% in baseball, but hard hit rate, top third of the league. Barrel percentage, just outside of the top third of the league. Average exit velocity, just outside top third of the league. Expected slug, just outside top quarter of the league. So absolutely, when he hits the ball very hard. The thing that has impressed me the most about Kerry Carpenter in his major league career is the fact that every time I have pointed something out of something that I want to see him adjust, or just, I guess, any adjustment that I think he needs to make, and something that maybe he's struggling in, a few weeks later, he has almost always adjusted it. And that's not like, obviously, he doesn't care what I think, and he shouldn't. But just like the organization and Carpenter are so in tune and know what he needs to improve on. Obviously, his hitting coach as well, very famous, has worked with Aaron Judge and whatnot, his personal hitting coach. So just for him to have a camp that is so well aware of what he needs to consistently improve on and how to do that, I think is unbelievably valuable. Okay, so I want to start off with that. The things that really jump out to me about Carp before we just get into overall kind of what I'm expecting out of him in the 2024 season. First off, I want to start with righty-lefty splits. Against lefties, had a 657 OPS. Against righties, had an 841 OPS. And in his, or out of his rather, 20 home runs that he hit, 18 of them were against righties. He also did not record a single double off of a lefty all year. So he recorded 2 extra base hits off of lefties the entire season. They were both, again, obviously home runs, but a 235 average and a 324 slug for that 657 OPS against lefties is something that, again, if he wants to be a everyday regular in this lineup, he is going to have to improve on. And there's nothing wrong with being a platoon hitter. I feel like that is such a negative connotation. This organization's full of them. AJ Hinch loves a good platoon hitter, right? But I think ideally, the Tigers, if they had to, perfect world this situation, it would be Kerry Carpenter learns how to not even be, an 850 OPS hitter against lefties. If he can just be league average, right? If he can be a league average or even slightly below league average hitter against lefties, and then have that, 840, 850, 860 OPS against righties, this guy could take a really big step forward by changing nothing else. Now, that makes it sound like it's easy to just like all of a sudden as a lefty be better against lefties. It's not. That's very difficult. He's going to have to work very hard on it. But that is one thing that is very easy to point to and just go, if he can even be remotely average in there. And I'm glad he got at bats against lefties last season. That was a big argument the whole fan base was having and seemed to be yelling at AJ Hinch through the TV screen every night because he just wasn't playing Carp at all against lefties. I'm glad he at least got somewhat of an opportunity to see where we stand with it. And now the next step is to obviously continue to progress and be better so that you're not the guy getting pinch hit for late in the game when a lefty. Ideally, you want Kerry Carpenter to play the whole game. You want that bat in the lineup for 9 innings. But if you have a 630 OPS, 650 OPS against lefties, AJ Hinch is going to go to a guy who's a more proven commodity against a lefty in those late game situations. So I think that's a big place to start for Carpenter and a fairly simplistic one, just not in terms of, execution and doing it, but just in terms of, pointing to numbers and saying he can get better at this. The next one is, talking about the home run drought at the end of the year. So we've talked about lefties. I think the biggest thing that he needs to improve on to be, again, just serviceable against lefties is just hit fastballs better against them. For a guy who did so much of his damage against fastballs at the beginning part of his career, in his call up in 2022, as well as last season, that's mostly against righties. Against lefties, last season had a 188 batting average against four-seam fastball lefties, and a 145 expected batting average. Only one home run, and obviously, again, no extra base hits that weren't home runs, obviously. With that, a 31.4% whiff rate, 50% put away pitch rate. This is all just four-seam fastballs against lefties, man. These are not good. These are numbers that for a pitch that he, again, kind of like made his living off of against righties. That's a big thing. A lot of lefties you see, like the breaking ball low and away, and we'll talk about his breaking ball effectiveness here in a second, but the breaking ball low and away on lefty-lefty matchups is such a, easy thing and kind of elementary sequencing, but it works, very often, even at the major league level. So this is one where it's not necessarily that is certainly part of it as well, but I think a lot of it is sequencing, right? Low and away, and then fastball up and in type of stuff. Because his numbers in up and in fastballs are not awesome against lefties. So I think that is a big place to start. Just hit fastballs better against left-handed pitching. Don't even worry about the rest. You don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We don't need you to hit 350 against every single pitch that a lefty throws. Again, I'm not asking for a superstar on the other hand of the plate. I just want him to be able to play 160 games if he stays healthy. And he's going to have to hit fastballs against lefties to be able to do that. Against righties is, I think, where a lot of the big conversation comes in against why there was no home runs in the latter half of the year. Because righties, he's always had power against. In the minors, in the majors, it doesn't matter. And that just really went away the last 6 weeks of the season. And the biggest thing that jumps out at you when you look at that is the slider. And this is so wild to me, but he hits 115 against right-handed pitching sliders. Not both-handedness, right? Lefties, he actually hit, it was not good, but it was like in the 220s or 230s, his batting average against left-handed pitching sliders. Against righty sliders, you know how many pitchers we talk about on the Tigers when we're doing our player previews and breakdowns on pitchers that are righties and just don't even throw their slider to lefties? Like almost all of them, right? So for him to be a lefty power bat that cannot, for whatever reason, hit consistently right-handed pitching sliders is such a weird anomaly. And he didn't do it in 2022, which gives me a little bit of hope, but he also had no power against them in 2022 or 2023. So that is something that clearly he needs to make an adjustment on and work on. We talked about the swing and the bat path a lot. His bat path is kind of just like an automatic barrel. Like it's exactly the launch angle of a barrel, and he starts low and goes up, kind of looks like a lightsaber at some points. And I think that that's great for, driving the ball consistently to all parts of the field. But slight adjustments need to be made for him to be able to hit that slider consistently from righties. Just such a weird sentence to even really be saying. And then when you look at the zones specifically that he struggles in and excels in, I think, again, when you filter it to just looking at against right-handed pitching, he chases a lot low. His strike rate on balls that are low and away or low and in is 42% and 55%, very high. His just swing percentage by zone. So just how many times is he swinging when the ball is in this zone? Balls that are out of the strike zone but low and away, 47%. It's very high. Almost half of balls that are low and away out of the zone he's offering at. That needs to improve for sure. Again, we talked. I think the another one of the bigger things to me is ground ball rate by zone. The ones that are in the strike zone, not super high. Obviously, the low ones are going to be higher, but that's kind of natural. That's not really anything that's alarming to me because the ones that are high are very low, right? That just kind of goes with the territory. But the balls that are low underneath the strike zone, 79% ground ball rate on balls that are low and away, and 100% on balls that are low and in. Now, there aren't too many batted ball events on low and in. I think there's only like 8 or 12, but 100% is 100%. I mean, that's a full season where every single time he made contact on a ball low and in out underneath the strike zone, it was an automatic ground ball. So that is something that he needs to improve on. And then, strikeouts by zone, right? There is not, if you break the strike zone down into 9 different squares, a 3x3 grid, and then the I don't know, ball zone, I guess we'll call it, by into 4 different squares. So you have balls low and away, low and in, up and away, right? Out of the strike zone in those 4 quadrants. So of those 13 zones, only 2 have strikeouts, right? Strikeouts by zone, the final pitch to finish off a strikeout in the double digits even, right? He's not striking out a lot in the strike zone. He's not chasing high, but 21 are low and away and 26 are low and in. Swinging and missing a lot low and in and low and away to righties. So, and again, because they're just throwing sliders down there. They're not throwing these sliders over the heart of the plate, right? Or else he would crush them. So that is a big, big thing for me is, and then just overall, right? If you don't want to, if this is too fancy or too much numbers being thrown at you, we can just do just straight up chase rate. 21st percentile in baseball. Righty, lefty, doesn't matter. 21st percentile in chase rate, 33.4%, offering at just a hair over, but about a third of balls that are outside of the strike zone he's swinging at. That's almost bottom 5th of the league. Whiff rate, around league average. Nothing crazy there. He's going to get some swings and misses just because he's a power threat. Strikeout rate doesn't concern me. 25% isn't alarmingly high. Walk rate, 7%, but 1.5%-ish lower than league average, depending on the year. Usually you're in that mid-8s is around league average. So, but 7% is not bad. That's not a free swinger. That's a guy that can draw a walk. So, yeah, man, there's a lot at the plate that I'm looking for him. And the reason that we're getting so specific and kind of nitty gritty with him is because I think he can be really good. And that gets us to 2024. I think the defense took a step forward as the year went along last year. That was a big talking point for him when he was younger, obviously. And I guess, he's still really young. Again, only a year and a half of Major League Baseball experience here. But I think that is something he's improved on a lot, and I give him a ton of credit for that. Again, like he's a guy that every time we seem to point something out, he immediately fixes it and makes an adjustment. I think that's so impressive. I don't worry about Kerry Carpenter being like a tried and true, like, no, I'm not going to make any adjustments. Like, no, he wants to be really, really good. And that's awesome. So defense has gotten better. If he can just be a slightly below zero defender, somewhat serviceable out there, he's obviously going to get a lot of looks at DH this season, but I fully expect him to get legitimate playing time in right field as well. So the fact, that they don't want anyone to just clog DH. They finally got rid of that in Miguel Cabrera. And I think they're excited to kind of use a lot of different names in the DH spot. So they're going to match up play it quite a bit. But yeah, I think that he showed signs of improvement there. His arm strength is actually really good. Top 15% in baseball in arm strength out there. So that's obviously a good thing to have. And he's not slow either. So he's got some tools on him as well. He's not just this, big burly like power threat. And that was proved in the offense as well. Again, almost hit 280. So as far as what I am kind of expecting out of him in 2024, I would love to see him just improve enough against lefties as to where we can see him on both sides of the plate. We talked a little bit about how to maybe improve the power numbers again that fell off at the last part of the year. Got to hit sliders better. Got to be able to read that out of the hand better. Got to lay off sliders really better. And then they'll have to attack the zone more. And then you can have your free for all like you did against harder pitches as well. So I think just laying off sliders, a big thing I'm going to look for this year, especially from righties, just improving period against lefties, being serviceable in the outfield. If everything goes well, this is a guy that should be a middle of the lineup bat for your team this season and should comfortably eclipse 20 home runs and be a legitimate middle of the lineup bat. If he can't do any of those things, then you're talking about a guy that, the floor is decently high here. And that's another thing that excites me about him. Even if he doesn't improve on a single thing I just mentioned, you're still getting a guy who is going to be a power threat and have an OPS over 800 against righties. And is going to be a platoon DH. Like if worst case scenario, he's an awful fielder. You can't play him out there. He never figures out how to hit lefties and he keeps chasing those sliders. Okay, well, he still has the ability to hit 20 home runs just off righties this season, and he gives you a little bit of a power threat. Okay, so a lot of variance in what he can be. Again, at the beginning of the show, I think he's kind of an X factor type of player. I think, he's not a lot of conversation around him, partially because he's hurt right now. All signs point to him being ready by opening day, though. But I think that a lot of the conversation is just, what do the Tigers have to do if they want to be, take this big step forward and be closer to a middle of the pack offense? I think a lot of people are just, either whether it's because of confidence in him and that it's just a foregone conclusion, or just, that he's not as much of a talking point as Green and Torkelson. I think Kerry Carpenter is going to have to be a huge reason for that. And I think he's capable, which excites me. But haven't seen him take an at-bat yet this year because of the injury, so we'll see how he looks. But that's all the things that I'm looking for. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow, baby. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all then. Go Tigers.